We are stitching Catwalk today, and I do have a very special helper with me. I don't know exactly what he's doing to be helpful, um, but here we go. I am going to be stitching on the orange version, the orange cat version, but the stitches are pretty much the same. So let's get to it. Very important work. So I started with the branches. So I'm using 2-ply of the brown color, and it's up to you if you want to do a split stitch like I did in this sample hoop, or for the sample hoop with the black cats, I actually did rows of stem stitch instead. And then I forgot. So when I did this one, I did split stitch. So I think they both look fine. It's really up to you if you have a preference for one over the other. I kind of like the stem stitch a little bit better. Here's the stem stitch. It adds a bit more texture. So I basically just did rows of it, rows and rows and rows. You can go back and forth to do the rows, or just kind of randomly fill it in like I'm doing here. I guess this is technically back split stitch because I'm going back into it, and I'm not really doing it in rows. I'm just doing it in kind of a blob, moving from one side to the other. And you can see here, this time I'll actually split. So you see I'm doing split stitch. Let's see, I'm leaving myself a little bit of a gap here where I want my flower to be stitched, and it's up to you how much of those guidelines you want to leave alone. There's pros and cons to doing both. If you actually cover them completely, it's going to be a little tricky because then you're not going to know where your flowers are supposed to go exactly, right? But exactly, who cares if they're exactly where they're supposed to be, right? You can, just do the best you can, and it's still going to look wonderful. But it could make it a little bit more challenging because you'll have to use your brain a little bit more. And I don't know, for me, sometimes I just want to color in stuff. I don't want to have to worry about thinking, Also, if you do cover the guidelines completely, what's going to happen is when you do the flowers and leaves, etc. on top, you are going to get a little bit more volume, a little bit more texture. So that is kind of nice. So there's a balance. I mean, be sure to do at least what I'm doing here, where I'm stitching up to those guidelines. And one thing I noticed is, after I did my branches and then came back and then added my flowers on top, is if there's any if there's anything showing, if there's any of the branch showing still, you can come back with the brown and go back in those spots. I have found that I have especially needed to do that with the moon, because the moon is very similar, where we're filling the shape and we're kind of leaving room for stuff that's going to be stitched on top. So again, I'm just doing split stitch here, filling with split stitch. Not in any kind of fancy way. I'm just sticking along with kind of the stitch directions, just kind of along with the length of the branch itself. If instead you want to do the stem stitch, it's going to look something like this. So we're going to go down, come up in between, so with a stem stitch we get kind of that twisted looking line. And then I would come back the other direction to make the next row. Continue to fill in like that. They're similar enough that doing this weird section of stem stitch on a split stitch tree shouldn't make too much of a impact. I don't think anyone's gonna see a photo of the finished work and be like, oh my god, she used a different stitch right there. So hopefully you can see the difference. Both are great. Both are acceptable. Do whatever one you like. All right, and then I guess I'll just move on to the cat from now. So if you have a pattern with black cats, you're just gonna fill the cats like how I'm filling this branch. Just with tons of kind of messy stitches. Maybe yours won't be as messy as mine. There is a diagram in the instructions to kind of help you with a suggested stitch direction for the cats. For the branches, I mean, they're just branches, so don't worry. I feel like I'm being very messy. I don't worry too much about, you know, outlining the shape or filling it in perfectly. Unless there's like a hole. There's like right here where there's a big hole I should fill in. But when it comes to the cats, I feel like it's definitely worth spending a little bit more time. Especially for the cat faces. If you did the autumn birds pattern, I'm sure you'll notice that this is very similar. I definitely stole from myself. I was inspired by my old pattern and thought, oh my gosh, we need some cats for October. So here we are. Okay, I just felt like I really needed to use up that floss. All right, so here I've got 2-ply of the 2 oranges. So I have my darker orange here and this lighter kind of tan here, which I've already started using. Now your guidelines on your fabric are going to look a little bit different because when I had this printed, I hadn't really figured out where the stripes were going to be at. So yours should already be on there. If you're doing the black cat, you can just ignore the stripes. You're just going to fill the cat with black. If you're doing the orange cat, however, you're going to want to get, well, it's kind of up to you which way you want to do this. I discovered that I kind of like doing the stripes first and then filling in the rest of the cat. So that's what I'm going to show you. So start up here. I should probably reference how many stripes I actually put on the cat. Okay, we're pretty close. Yours might look potentially a little bit different since I just drew mine on randomly. Oops. So you're going to use, I guess, we'll call it satin stitch to start, but we're going to be stitching into it so it'll like turn into split stitch. But for now we can just call it satin stitch since we're just using the one color to start. And the edge, you don't really need to worry about the edges being nice and neat because again, we're going to be stitching into this. The only reason you'd want, sorry, I have the hook of my hoop is right up there. I don't know what I was just saying. Oh, the only reason why you'd want to make that nice and neat is just to make sure you're not losing the guidelines completely. Oh dear. I regret having the screw right there. I'm gonna just keep getting caught on it. So I usually like to go from one end of the cat to the other. So for the black cats, I did start with the heads and then just worked my way down. And you can see I'm doing the same thing here. Again, I would exaggerate these because they are going to get stitched into with that tan color and we don't want them to totally disappear. Also, if you have a specific orange tabby you're trying to replicate and maybe yours has more stripes or just has more of this color than the lighter color, you can always make these stripes even thicker or add even more. And you could also replicate this. Say you want to get a brown tabby on there, you could do it with 2 shades of brown, or you could do 2 shades of gray. All the tabbies are invited. Luckily, Biscuit left. He was bonking against the clamp for the phone for recording the video. I was like, dude, this is not gonna work, my friend. I know you're happy and that you love everything. He's just, gosh, he's so happy. He's also a very big scaredy cat, though. I don't really know what that's about. But he's literally afraid of his own shadow, literally afraid of the wind, etc. He's just very high strung. Poor little guy. Okay, that should give us enough to work with. So I'm going to just park this needle, and I've got I started the stripes over here, but stopped because I realized, oh, I should do this on camera. Okay, so we're gonna do cat head. So I am gonna try to pierce into these stitches. I guess, you could do it, I don't know. I was gonna say you could do it as satin stitch so that you're not piercing, but you just have like blocks of color. Oh, not this. But I think this will look more smooth. So you can go down like I did with those first 2 stitches or come up through. Either way, we're splitting. Just trying to make sure we have a nice sharp point here for our ear. I'm going to tuck this one under here. I think that should get kind of hidden. That looks good. And then you can kind of start going into the head here. So please remember that the guidelines are permanent, so you want to make sure you cover them. Just trying to come up from there, but I think I'm actually going to be more accurate if I go down with my needle on the guidelines to kind of make sure that I keep the profile of the cat nice and sharp. So go slow. Oh yeah, so I was talking about the crows. So if you did the crows, you may have had the experience of it was very easy to lose the detail in the crow beaks And so I would say this is kind of the same, where, you know, you have the cat face and you want to make sure you stick to the guidelines as best you can. It might help to outline them first. You could definitely do that. Use this color and do a split stitch. I find that what happens is I just tend to kind of add more and more stitches to kind of shape the face, and in doing so it ends up kind of padded. Oops, that was a weird thing I did. So we're almost, what is that? Oh, Biscuit's back. Biscuit, darling. Oh dear, he's here. And he's happy. Okay, dear. I know. You love life. I don't know where to sneak that stitch. Okay. I feel like we're pretty good, although I think there's a hole. Yeah, there's like a little hole right here. Just, I don't want to overdo the nose because I don't want it to look like the cat has like a pig nose, you know. Okay. So I'm going to move now to our next stripe. I didn't do eyes on the cats. You can definitely add them if you would like. There are going to be lots of tiny stitches in between all of the stripes, and it will get boring and old. That is my experience. So you might want to, well, kind of do what I did. I started at the beginning of the design, or the bottom of the design. Yes, the beginning. I started at the bottom, and sorry, I'm just getting some more thread here. Started at the bottom, worked my way up, and so, you know, handled each cat as I got to it. And so I got to take breaks rather than doing all three cats at once and just getting so tired of these little stitches between the stripes. I suppose you could just fill the whole cat with the lighter color and then try to do the orange stripes on top. But again, then you're in that situation where it's like, oh, okay, I just covered my guidelines. Where did the stripes go? But you could definitely give it a shot. So I come up through this stripe, and when you come up through those stitches, make sure you're actually coming up between, or sorry, not between, but that you're actually piercing some stitches rather than going up in between two stitches. When you go up in between two stitches, sometimes it separates those two stitches and you end up with a little hole. Although in this case, we're just making fur, so it's easy to go back and just add more, you know, another stitch to fill in any holes. Okay. So down here, we kind of change our stitch direction a little bit from like a down to a sideways. Something like that. If you've never done any thread painting, and I don't know, does this count as thread painting? I guess so. Sure, why not? If you're new to it, I will tell you that all thread paintings go through an awkward phase. It's just, they do. They all do. And I feel like I've kind of broken through mine. This is looking better. It's starting to make sense. But there's definitely there's going to be an awkward point where you're working on it and you're like, this is awful. I'm doing this wrong. And I'm just going to say, just keep adding stitches. Just keep adding fur. Fill in the space. If this process here is just not fun, you're not enjoying it, you hate it, you're over it, well, don't do it. Just make a solid colored cat. You can do either of the oranges. You can go get some black and do the black instead. You could mix the two oranges on your needle and use them both at the same time. It's up to you. This should be fun. It shouldn't be a headache. Well, it shouldn't be too much of a headache. We'll say that because this is definitely a headache. I guess doing the stripes as satin stitch and doing the rest, or I guess I'm trying to think how you could do that. I'm trying to think of modifications to still create the stripes without having to do all these little detail stitches. I guess it would be just filling the whole cat with the lighter color and then just coming back in with the darker color and making stripes on top. Easiest way you can. Okay, I don't want to go too much further because I don't have my next stripes in here ready to stitch into. So I think we will pause here. Hopefully that looks like a cat silhouette. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, you can see the jaggedness of, where my stitches are. I'll see how I feel in the end. I mean, right now we're zoomed in, so you really notice it. But I'm thinking by the time I'm done and I zoom out and look at the whole piece, I'm not going to care much about that. All right, so let's do some flowers, shall we? Okay, now if you have the other version, if you have the black cats, you might notice there's a different number of flower colors between the two designs. And that is fine. Don't worry about that. Just use the keys to kind of figure out in general where to put all the different colors. And and have it in the instructions to, not worry too much about it. We're just trying to create this gradient the best that we can. If it doesn't look exactly like mine, that is fine. Again, don't stress. That's just embroidery. Okay, so I'm going to just show you this flower first. This is going to be the small rose, which is a stem stitch rose. So we're going to start with a French knot. So we're going to come up in the center and we're going to do a wrap and place your needle near where you just came out and slide that wrap down to the surface of the fabric before pulling the needle through. Here, a nice pop. Technically, I would wait to do this until you've already got all your branches filled in, but I don't think you want to watch me fill any more branches. All right, so here we're going to do the stem. So we're going to come up. We're just going to do like one lap around. So I'm going to go down, kind of hold a loop out to the side. Hopefully not as awkwardly as that. And I'm going to come up in between. Okay. And then I'm going to pull. And I'm going to do it again. So the smaller you make these little stitches, the more you can fit and the more texture you'll have for these little roses. I'd suggest actually just using, as far as the guidelines go, there's the center dot and then there's the circle. You can go tight on it, or you can just use that circle as your guideline. Like just go down on that, because then it's going to be a little bit bigger. I think it'll look better. Cute, right? It's just like an adorable little rose. And then at the end, you can decide, okay, is this the end? Probably. Okay. I was going to see if I could fit another stitch in there, but I think it's fine. But you could also added another stitch. Okay, now for this, we have Lazy Daisy. So I'm going to come up from through the center, go at the edge of my petal, collect this loop here, make a detached chain stitch. So you'll find these in the pattern as flowers like this, and also as just petals, like right down here. We just have a couple petals. And again, I would exaggerate over these guidelines. I mean, you definitely want to cover them. But, I mean, it's up to you how big and voluptuous you want all your florals to be. But the guidelines are permanent. Again, I think I said that already more than once. Okay, so here we have an opportunity to go over our branch. So I left that little hole, so I knew I was going to have a petal going this way. There we go. Well, I definitely exaggerated this flower. It's way bigger. But that's fine. That's fine. You should have plenty of floss. I always try to add a little extra. But if you make your flowers like way bigger, then, well, there might not be enough. All right, there's flower. And then what else? We need to do a woven wheel rose. We'll do one here. I don't know what color I was gonna do there. What do you think? Let's see. Oh, you can't even see what I'm looking at here. This guy here, I don't know. I guess, yeah, we'll use this color. Why not? So for woven wheel rose, we're doing 5 straight stitches, converging at the center. You can see where I left space for this when I was stitching the branches. I don't want to forget to do the moon. The moon's hard. I think it adds a lot to the design, otherwise I'd get rid of it. But it's challenging to do a circle shape. Okay, so I did my 5 straight stitches converging in the center, and I just popped out near the center, and I'm going to do some weavings. I'm going to go over and then under. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of pushing up with my other hand underneath the center of this rose, so I don't stab anything else as I'm doing this. I just continue the pattern over, under, over, under. Let's see. It's an awkward one for me at this angle. Oops. Okay. So when I'm doing this, I'm weaving, I'm not piercing. And then when I feel like if me and my row is big enough, I'll just go down. I do feel like it's a little lopsided, so I'm going to actually just come up and add a little stitch right here to kind of even it out. Like so. And then, let's see, what else can I tell you? If you want to just do French knots, I don't really have a great place to do one. Well, we'll just do one right here. You can add them wherever you want, and they're great because you can use them to kind of help blend. So I would actually wait until you're all the way done before coming back and doing the French knots with what leftover thread you have. And then you can do a single wrap, or I was just going to do a double wrap. They're going to be a little harder. You're going to pull to get your wrap down to your fabric surface. Pull through. Oh. My thread got like one of the plies kind of disconnected right there at the end. That was weird. But we're going to go with it. Okay. Now we have our leaves. And let's see. So be sure to look at the diagram. Diagram's the word I was looking for. Look at the diagram to figure out where all the leaves go. Oh, and you'll notice this, mine doesn't have all the leaves drawn on here yet. This was my, I was still trying to work out the pattern, so they're not all on here. But, okay, so how should I do this? So let's look at this leaf right here. So basically, you want to really exaggerate over these guidelines. That's just like the center of the leaf. So go beyond, and that way you can kind of get the more fun serrated edge and not worry about the guideline showing. Looks like I filled this in. So I don't want the leaf on top. I actually kind of want it behind, so I'm kind of sneaking in stitches here. All right, and like one goes over here somewhere. So some of them, like the small ones, they're just like 3 stitches. We got our center vein. We got one from the right coming to the left, and one from the left going to the right. Just like that. This teeny little guy. Okay, what else? That's fishbone stitch. That's how we're doing our leaves. I guess we just need to talk about the moon. All right, here's my moon. It's awful. I hate it. No, it's okay. It's fine. Up close, it's not great. It's really hard. So you can see I did outline first. I just followed the guidelines with a single strand. I did split stitch all the way around. What do I have on my needle? Oh, I have two strands on my needle. That's not going to work so well, huh? It's going to look even worse. So the plan here was to try to make it look as smooth as possible. All right, now, okay, here we go. We got some scissors. We're good. We're under control. So if you do the outline, and then we're doing like rows of split stitch, all of them with like this horizontal stitch direction to try to keep it consistent. But then when you do those flowers on top, it's like, oh geez. So you might want to just do the branch on top and skip all the flowers, in which case you would just fill in the moon up to the branch and call it a day. You'd be done. It's still hard, and part of the difficulty is like keeping the round moon round. But you potentially, would have an easier time keeping your round moon round if you used like a stabilizer on the back of your fabric. Of course, here I'm telling you this now, like thanks, Jessica. But you know, your fabric, I mean, if you're tracing the design yourself, I would definitely recommend that. If you're doing the printed fabric, you know, it is printing as a perfect circle. So as far as getting that perfect circle back, it's going to be a matter of like pulling your fabric in the right way to make your moon a perfect circle again. Is it ever going to be a perfect circle? No, never. And that's okay. All right, so let me fill some of this in so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm just doing like these rows of kind of long stitches, and maybe the long stitches are my problem. Maybe I should have done shorter stitches. But I did these long stitches trying to make the moon look more even, which now that I'm saying out loud kind of sounds silly. Like maybe just doing shorter stitches would have made more sense because the moon does have texture, right? It's not like it's this white porcelain plate in the sky, you know. It's got massive craters. So I'm just filling it in with these stitches, right? And when you can split between rows, do it. You can actually split a single ply like that. And work your way up. I'm just kind of going back and forth, trying to fill it in. Try to make it as smooth as I can. Easier said than done. It's challenging, I know. Potentially you could fill this with satin stitch, right? If you don't want to do the splits. It's just a pretty long stitch. I mean, I'm sure I've done satin stitch that long before and didn't have a problem with it before. So up to you. So then you'll notice when we come back down to our flower here, you can see, like for instance, right here, we have my flower went down here and it kind of separated these stitches. So what you might need to do when you're done is to come back and do a little bit of repair work. I think I'm going to put this here. And then it looks like maybe right here. This got kind of split open. Like that. And one thing that might happen too is like I might do all this work and then I notice that I'm starting to kind of like eat into my branch. When you're done, then you might actually have to come back and add more stitches on your branch to help your branch pop back out. So, and actually I did have to do that with the cats. When I was doing the black cats, I had to go back and forth a little bit between the black and the brown to make sure the cat was popping out over the brown, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's do this leaf on top of here so we can see that. I left that for us to do. So I'm just stitching on top of these. What a mess, right? So you can see how I came up right now in between stitches, right? You know, I was talking about that before when we were doing the cat versus coming up between stitches versus coming up piercing a stitch, which looks like that. You can see I actually pierced part of a ply, and that is actually going to be a little bit better. But when I come down here, don't pull too tight or I'm going to pull that stitch down, right? So pay attention to your tension. Attention to the tension. I'm going to just go real nice and slow. And again, if you're like, oh no, I'm not doing those flowers on top of that moon, no way, then don't. Just do the branch through it. Or I guess you could try to do the flowers and then the moon up to the flowers. Ugh, it's hard. It's hard, guys. It's like any embroidery I do. It's always the question, right? What do I do first? And there's pros and cons, whatever you choose. And sometimes you just have to make a decision and go for it. Okay, there's my leaf. You can see I definitely went in between stitches here. So then we can come back and correct. Oops, I don't actually want to pierce the green. Let me start out here. Something like that. I feel like this one got weird too a little bit. Okay. You can do it. I have faith in you. All right, that's pretty much the gist. I don't know what else I can say except have fun. I'm looking for my, oh, here's some of those French knots I was talking about to help kind of blend between. Here's a close-up of the kitties. Everyone likes the kitties. I think that's it. I guess I need to finish that. Here's another close-up of the black. It's hard to keep them clean. When you have black pants and you get fuzzies all over yourself. All right, so same thing again. So here you can see more of the stem stitch I did on the branches. I feel like this was the first one I did, and I think it was like a little bit more loose. So I don't know if you can see the difference. So like here versus here, how much thicker I did the flowers and the leaves. So just kind of interesting to look at the difference between those. Because this one, it was based off of this one, so I was using guidelines, and so I was trying to stick with the guidelines, so I kind of was losing my mojo as far as like having more fun and going beyond them a little bit, making them a little bit more floofy. So I guess that moon doesn't look horrible, right? What else? There was something I was about to say. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I know. Okay, so just two more things. It's up to you if you want, like, for example, this cattail can go behind the branch or it can go in front. Same with like here if you want it to scoop behind. And then the last thing was as far as what you want to have in here, if you want to actually remove your hoop from the fabric and move your hoop so that you actually stitch all the way to the edge here, you can do that so it looks like the branches come all the way off the edge, or just leave them just like that. So, whew. Okay, have fun. If you have any questions, any concerns, any problems, send me an email. I'm always happy to help. Bye.